live from New Delhi. You're watching DT India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and coming up in the next hour. Sri Lanka counts votes for the new parliament with economic reforms at stake. 65% voter turnout recorded. Results expected on Friday. Interim government in Bangladesh under scanner as Attorney General seeks removal of words like secularism and socialism from the Bangladesh's constitution. As India gears up to celebrate Janjatiya Gaurav Divas on November 15th, President Droupadi Murmu delivers special message to highlight government schemes for welfare of tribal communities. In other news, India achieves decade-high October merchandise exports, surges to $39.20 billion during October 2024 from $33.43 billion during October 2023. We begin with parliamentary elections in Bangladesh, which were held on Thursday in Sri Lanka, seen as the crucial test for newly elected President Anura Kumara Dissanayake, who is aiming to secure a majority the parliament and advance his reform agenda as well. Amid severely beleaguered economy in Sri Lanka, including the inflation and tax hikes, over 17 million voters were eligible to elect around 225 members of the parliament from 8,800 candidates. Results are expected by November 15th, that's Friday, if counting takes place smoothly.
Sri Lankans voted on Thursday to elect new members of parliament. This election is a litmus test for the incumbent president Anura Kumara Dissanayake, who is aiming to secure a parliamentary majority and push forward his reform agenda. His party currently holds just 3 seats in the outgoing parliament. After coming to power, Dissanayake called for a snap election, capitalizing on the sentiment in his favor. Over 17 million voters were eligible to choose from 8,800 candidates vying for 225 parliamentary seats. The final result is expected to be declared by November 15, provided the counting process goes smoothly.
We need to select the people who can serve the country without any corruptions. So that's why we came here to vote, cast a vote, to select the correct candidate.
I came to select people who can serve the country without any corruption. So that's why we came here to vote, to select the correct candidate.
The key alliances and parties in the fray include President Dissanayake's National People's Power Coalition, which won only 3 seats in 2020 elections. The Samagi Jana Balavigya SJB, a leading alliance led by the former opposition leader and presidential candidate Sajitha Premadasa. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna SLPP, the party of former President Mahindra Rajapaksa and Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who also fielded candidates. For the first time in 88 years, no members of the Rajapaksa family contested the parliamentary polls. Sri Lanka typically backs its president in general elections, especially if it is held soon after a presidential vote. The president wields executive power, but Dissanayake still requires a parliamentary majority to appoint a full-fledged cabinet and deliver on key elections promises to cut taxes, support local businesses, and fight poverty. The main challenges to Dissanayake's coalition, Samagi Jana Balavigya party of the opposition leader Sajitha Premadasa, who favors a mix of interventionist and free market economic policies. This parliamentary election is critical for the island nation following the uprising against former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who was forced to resign and flee the country amid a severe economic crisis. The election is being held amid significant economic challenges facing the island nation. These include a steep hike in food and fuel prices, compounded by tax increases aimed at securing a $2.9 billion loans from the International Monetary Fund. With inputs from Dr. Ahmed Moin Faruqi in Colombo, Sayyid Absarul Hassan for DD India.
And Dr. Ahmed Moin Faruqi joins us live from Colombo. Good evening, Ahmed. Now, top contenders are definitely Dissanayake, Harinya Marasuriya, and most importantly, opposition SJP leader Sajid Premadasa, who is typically eyeing a win. But help us understand what is the sort of popular sentiment on ground which will decide the direction in which these elections are going.
Sakal, very good evening to all our viewers across the world. Yes, it's a very crucial election. As of now, I want to mention a few things before we go into the discussion that we were about to have.
Sure.
Currently speaking, the first results with regard to the postal voting, vote counting have started coming out, with Gaul emerging as the first one, in which National People's Power has secured 80%, almost 80% votes. And this shows a very positive trend for the ruling government, ruling party. Coming back to the question, the important topics which had centered around in the election campaign as well as in the discussions in the run-up to the elections were primarily the economic crisis and the cost of living difficulties which people had been facing in the light of austerity measures adopted by the previous government. In addition to this, several charges of corruption on the previous regimes were also keenly debated upon, and there was a consensus that a complete revamp and a complete reform of the entire government system was essential. And this is where President Anura Kumara Dissanayake, he has struck a chord with the common man, wherein he has promised several steps, including a complete revamp of the government. And this is something where he requires a parliamentary majority.
Right.
And he has been talking about getting a majority, not just a simple majority, but also a strong majority in which he will have power to even go ahead with constitutional amendments. This is something which will be very, very important because getting a two-third majority will be very powerful for any government in power in Sri Lanka. We are already aware Sri Lanka follows a system where there is an executive presidency. The executive president, right now, it's Anura Kumara Dissanayake of National People's Power. He is a very, very powerful official in terms of any government, if we talk about as any head of state or head of government. In addition to that, if he gets a complete majority in the form of a two-third majority in the parliament, he will have powers to rewrite several of the provisions that have been allowed in the constitution and provide for several amendments as well.
Okay. Ahmed, having said that, help us understand the promises that are made by the other key alliances, including the opposition, amidst the beleaguered economy, which we also talked about. Is it really cutting ice with the electorate of Bangladesh? In the sense, is it really a tight contest and a formidable competition for Dissanayake?
Sakal, to begin with here, there have been discussions and debates with regard to how each of these parties would go ahead, given that if they come into power, right from the time the presidential elections had been held in this country. Now, Sajid Premadasa of SJP had talked about a renegotiation of IMF deal, the deal in which austerity measures had been adopted to increase the revenues of the government by increasing income tax, VAT, and various other tariffs on utilities which the government provides, including electricity, fuel, and various others. Now, this has something which people had thought will have a lot of impact with regard to appealing to the electorate. But that was not the case, as we have seen in the elections, in the presidential elections earlier this year, where the National People's Power candidate, Anura Kumara Dissanayake, he had gained more traction by promising several of the measures with regard to dealing with the corruption as well as the economic issues. While Sajid Premadasa has talked about a very inclusive kind of a promise in which he has talked about the ethnic issues as well as he has talked about free market, and he's also talked about the economic issues which are plaguing Sri Lanka. But it is not something which has resonated well with the common man, because he is being seen as a person who belongs to the old guard. And people have they have had some amount of resistance with regard to considering the old guard coming back into the power. So that's somewhere where the National People's Power had an advantage, and that's where it is being seen that NPP might get a little more number of seats as compared to what has been anticipated also.
Okay. Ahmed, before we leave you, a final one on the early projections that we are getting, and the picture is going to be absolutely clear tomorrow, if all goes well smoothly.
Yes, Sakal, you see, Election Commission had said that by around 10 p.m. tonight, we will have results from the postal ballot counting. And thereafter, gradually later on in the night, the results and the early trends of the main votes, main ballot box votes will start emerging. Hopefully, we should have early trends early morning tomorrow, and thereafter by evening we should have complete picture with regard to who stands where, which party stands where, and who gets how many seats. Hopefully tomorrow evening we should get a complete picture.
All right, and of course you will be joining us live and tracking this big story very, very closely. As of now, many thanks, Ahmed, for joining us live from Colombo. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sure. Shifting focus from Sri Lanka to Bangladesh, where Attorney General of Bangladesh, Mohammad Asaduzzahman, has called for some significant changes to the Bangladesh's constitution, and some of them have actually triggered widespread reactions and concerns domestically and some quarters internationally too. The Attorney General has suggested removing terms like socialism and secularism and Bengali nationalism, and his argument being that these terms do not reflect Bangladesh's majority Muslim population. Asaduzzahman has made his remarks during the fifth day of the hearings at the High Court concerning the legality of Bangladesh's 15th constitutional amendment. Now, this amidst when interim government, which is in place, is already facing some tough questions over protection and safety of minorities in Bangladesh. Here's a report.
Bangladesh's interim government, led by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, came under the scanner after the government's top official called for removing the word secular from the constitution, citing a 90% Muslim population in the country. The Attorney General of Bangladesh, Mohammad Asaduzzahman, advocated for substantial constitutional changes during the hearings at the High Court on the legality of the 15th constitutional amendment on Wednesday. The Attorney General said that secularism does not reflect the realities of Bangladesh, where 90% of the population is Muslim. Asaduzzahman also proposed removing other key provisions: socialism, Bengali nationalism, and the designation of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman as the father of the nation. The Attorney General further criticized national identity through language, claiming it has fostered unnecessary divisions among citizens. He argued that no other country uses language as a basis of national identity, making this provision unique and problematic. He vehemently opposed the abolition of the caretaker government system. A caretaker government system of Bangladesh was the system of an unelected interim government tasked with organizing free and fair general elections. The interim government is already facing some tough questions over protection and safety of minorities. The situation has drawn global attention. UN human rights officials and other advocacy groups have raised serious concerns about the country's human rights record under Yunus's leadership. The United States too raised concerns over recent action preventing Awami League activists from organizing a political rally in Dhaka.
We support the freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and association for all, including dissenting and opposition voices. These freedoms, in our point of view, are essential elements of any democracy. We routinely communicate that support to all our partners, including the interim government of Bangladesh, and upholding and protecting these freedoms for all Bangladeshis is necessary to ensure a true democratic future.
Besides, international concerns mount as press freedoms in Bangladesh face new restrictions. United States has called for respecting the rights and freedoms of all journalists.
It is our strong point of view that an engaged free press is vital to covering any situation, including, of course, the situation in Bangladesh. Press freedom and media freedom is important to the president, important to the secretary, and we would encourage and want to ensure that the rights and freedoms of all journalists are being appropriately respected.
Recently, the interim government cancelled press accreditation cards for 184 journalists in Bangladesh, including the bureau chief of the Associated Press, by the interim government. The Editors Association of Bangladesh called it undemocratic practices. With inputs from Naval Singh Parmar and Dhaka, Bureau Report, DD India.
And DD India's Naval Singh Parmar joins us on phone line from Bangladesh to understand the ramifications and where's the story going. Now, writ petition has challenged the validity of the Constitution, Naval, the 15th Amendment made by the now ousted Awami League regime of deposed Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and this happened way back in 2011. Now, the recent remarks made by the Attorney General, first of all, if you could just give us a perspective, is this really cutting ice with the people of Bangladesh, the way interim government is already under flak when it comes to freedom of press, and now these remarks by or statements or suggestions by the Attorney General?
As far as the 15th Amendment of Bangladesh Constitution is concerned, there is a legal debate is going on in the High Court of Bangladesh, and the main concern about the 15th Amendment of the Constitution is to restoration of caste system in Bangladesh. Earlier it was there, and due to that, during that time only Sheikh Hasina comes on power back in 2010-11 in her first term. After that, during Awami League government, Sheikh Hasina government amended the Constitution of Bangladesh, and they abolished the provision of caretaker government system, which was opposed by the opposition party at that time also. And then after subsequent election, opposition party were demanding a caretaker government system in Bangladesh, but it was abolished with the help of 15th Amendment. So that's why the opposition and other parties currently in Bangladesh are demanding to restore the caretaker government system, and for that they want to abolish a 15th Amendment to the Constitution. And at the same time, there were other provisions also added during the 15th Amendment, and one of them that was the secularism, socialism, and the title to Sheikh Mujibur Rahman as a father of the nation. So as I said in report that the Advocate General is not against he is not denying the contribution of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, but at the same time he is of the view that this kind of inclusion in the preamble of Constitution is not necessary. That is the view of the current government, and at the same time they are of the view that the Bengali nationalism is a very unique term in the Bangladesh Constitution, because it is a nationalism based on language. There are other people who are living in Bangladesh, they are not native Bengali speaking.
Okay.
So it undermines their nationalist characteristic. So that is also a concern raised by the current government. So there is in Bangladesh also people are, some of the provision of 15th Amendment are contentious in many people or opposition parties. At the same time, minorities and the liberal thinking people are of the view that the secularism should be the part of the Bangladesh Constitution.
But you know, very quickly, since you talked about minorities, there are already some huge concerns regarding the safety and the security of the minorities in Bangladesh, and there have been reports, on that aspect as well. And then we're also looking at the clamping of freedom of press in Bangladesh, wherein the US administration has also reacted to it. So how is interim government perhaps reacting to such challenges and reactions which are coming across?
Yes, post 5th August, there were incidents of violence, and it was irrespective of the religious line. There were many attempts and many incidents happened on the people who were not in favor of the removal of Sheikh Hasina government, or who were the part of the earlier dispensation. So many of the people who were of Muslim community, Muslim believers of the Islam, also become a target of the revengeous kind of incident happened in Bangladesh. But after that, the many incidents on the minority also reported, and that is the unfortunate thing. The government is trying, Indian government is trying to control this type of situation, but still fringe elements in the countryside or even in urban areas are taking benefit of the lawlessness due to the absence of police force in the streets.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Naval Sin, for joining us on phone line on that big story. Thank you. Shifting focus to other stories on the show, Iran has expressed a willingness to resolve issues with the United Nations Nuclear Agency regarding its atomic program, but firmly stated it will not yield to external pressure. Following a meeting in Tehran, Iran's nuclear chief Mohammad Islami has warned that any interventionist resolution in its nuclear affairs would be met with strong reciprocal actions. Islami also described his talks with IAEA head Rafael Grossi as consistently constructive.
The contacts and exchanges between us and Mr. Grossi have always been constructive and effective. And on this trip, we also had constructive negotiations and discussions with Mr. Grossi.
Let me say one thing. Policies, decisions are the result of circumstances. And I think it is in our power now here to take concrete steps that will indicate clearly, not only to the United States, of course to the United States as well, but to the entire international community, that we can find ways of understanding, we can clarify things, we can move forward with concrete solutions to these things, knowing that on the basis of this, it will be possible to make progress.
The Islamic Republic of Iran is ready for nuclear negotiation, is ready for nuclear cooperation within the framework of previous agreement with the agency. It depends on how serious the opposite parties are in this matter. The Islamic Republic of Iran, with goodwill, made the nuclear agreement JCPOA and implemented it with goodwill. It was the other parties who withdraw.
And in other stories, after the resounding victory in the US elections, President-elect Donald Trump has chosen his loyalist for his second cabinet beginning from January 2025. From billionaire Elon Musk to former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard are tapped for top positions. Our next report brings you the list of new members of the Trump's cabinet.
Just days after his resounding victory on November 5 in the US presidential election, President-elect Donald Trump has started selecting people. He wants to implement his America First policies on border, trade, economy, and more. The names include some of the closest allies from Capitol Hill and the key advisors from his 2024 campaign. Donald Trump on Wednesday named Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democratic congresswoman and the first Hindu in the US Congress, as the new Director of National Intelligence. As part of her job, Tulsi will oversee 18 spy agencies in the United States. Trump described Gabbard as a proud Republican who can bring her fearless spirit into the intelligence community. While Tom Homan, the former Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, will oversee border security efforts. Homan has pledged to prioritize the deportation of individuals who pose a security threat to the country.
Thank you, Mr. Nunes.
The Republican Congresswoman and staunch Trump supporter Elise Stefanik would be Ambassador of the United States to the United Nations. Former Congressman Lee Zeldin will oversee the Environmental Protection Agency, aligning with Trump's energy policy reforms. Zeldin, a staunch Trump ally, served in Congress from 2015 to 2023. Fox News host Pete Hegseth, a veteran of the Army National Guard, has been appointed Secretary of Defense. At the same time, on Wednesday, Trump's nomination of Congressman Matt Gaetz to be his Attorney General arrived like a thunderclap in Washington, D.C. Congressman and former Army Green Beret Mike Waltz will advise Trump on national security issues with a particular focus on China. In another announcement, Donald Trump named tech billionaire Elon Musk and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, a former Republican presidential candidate, to lead a newly created Department of Government Efficiency. John Ratcliffe, former Director of National Intelligence under Trump, has been named the CIA Director. U.S. Senator Marco Rubio to become Secretary of State.
It's a tremendous honor to the President who places confidence in me in a position of such importance. It's also a tremendous responsibility, and the job of the Secretary of State is to execute on the foreign policy set by the elected President of the United States, and I hope to have the opportunity to do it if my current colleagues here in the U.S. Senate confirm.
The U.S. Cabinet is made up of 15 federal agencies, each headed by an appointed secretary. Together with the Vice President, these officials advise the President and carry out government policies, with inputs from Aman Kumar Himanshu. Bureau Report, DD India.
The 29th Conference of Parties, or COP29, is underway in Baku in Azerbaijan, where world leaders are meeting and negotiating to agree on climate crisis. On Thursday, the European Union said that the countries at the COP29 climate summit were still way off on agreeing a collective target for financing the efforts to counter climate change. European Union negotiator Jacob Bergsman said that the new collective quantified goal draft text was still too long to send the signals that are necessary.
I've seen some versions of the outcome on the NCQG that have been no more than 1.5 or 2 pages in order to capture everything that we need to send the signals that are necessary under the new collective quantified goal. So clearly we are way off a landing ground if you look at the texts on their own.
Well, India's rich cultural diversity is largely shaped by its tribal communities who have played a crucial role in the nation's history and development. Every year on November 15th, Janjatiya Gaurav Divas is celebrated to honor the contributions of these communities, especially in India's freedom struggle. The day marks the birth anniversary of Bhagwan Birsa Munda, a tribal leader whose legacy continues to inspire. India's President Droupadi Murmu delivered a special message highlighting government's welfare schemes for tribal communities.
Since the year 2021, the government of India has started the tradition of celebrating Janjatiya Gaurav Divas every year on 15th November on the occasion of the birth anniversary of Bhagwan Birsa Munda. No praise is too high for this decision to express respect for the tribal communities. Many steps are being taken to make the people aware of the glorious contribution of the tribal communities. Museums are being built in various parts of the country in memory of tribal heroes. The Museum of Bhagwan Birsa Munda in Ranchi has become a site of pilgrimage. The museum named Janjatiya Darshan has also been developed in Rashtrapati Bhavan.
Every year on November 15th, Janjatiya Gaurav Divas is celebrated to honor the contributions of tribal communities, especially in India's freedom struggle. This year on November 15th, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit Jamui in Indian state of Bihar to mark the commemoration of the Janjatiya Gaurav Divas and the beginning of the 150th birth anniversary celebrations of Bhagwan Birsa Munda. Prime Minister Modi will also unveil a commemorative coin and postal stamp in honor of Bhagwan Birsa Munda. He will also inaugurate and lay the foundation stone for development projects worth over rupees 6,640 crore, which are aimed at improving infrastructure and uplifting tribal communities in rural and remote areas. India will renew a request made to Canada in 2023 for extradition of Khalistani radical and designated terrorist Arsh Singh Gill alias Arsh Dalla following reports of his arrest in that country. And in a response to media queries regarding the arrest of the designated terrorist in Canada, MEA official spokesperson Randir Jaiswal said that in a statement that Arsh Dalla is a proclaimed offender in over 50 cases of murder, attempt to murder, extortion and terrorist acts, including terror financing. He said in May 2022, a red corner notice was issued against him. He was also designated in India as an individual terrorist in 2023, and India had requested the Canadian government for his provisional arrest in July 2023, but it was declined. Jaiswal expressed hope that Canada government will extradite or deport Dalla to face justice in India. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Coming up next, this is what we have for you. We will be discussing with experts on interim government in Bangladesh's plan to make constitutional changes. And Dominica to bestow its highest national honour to India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Our habitats are turning into concrete jungles, and that is concerning, but there is hope even in this grim reality.
Our rivers are like lifelines. They are spaces for humans, for biodiversity, and yes, we have neglected them so far, but really that's an opportunity for us to restore them to their natural conditions.
We now have species that can adapt by conserving the water they have instead of letting it evaporate and being easy to care for.
We have always been farmers in my family. We used to do chemical farming with hybrid seed varieties, but now we have switched to organic farming with natural seeds.
This embankment will be removed and the river will be widened to cover the grassland up to the wider flood embankments on both the Swiss and Austrian side.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and before we move on, let's do a quick recap of the top stories we're tracking for you on the show. Sri Lanka counts votes for new parliament with economic reforms at stake. 65% voter turnout recorded. Results expected on Friday. Interim government in Bangladesh under scanner as Attorney General seeks removal of words secularism and socialism from Bangladesh's constitution. And as India gears up to celebrate Janjatiya Gaurav Divas on November 15th, President Droupadi Murmu delivers special message to highlight government schemes for welfare of tribal communities. Well, let's go back to one of our lead stories where the Bangladesh's interim government wants to remove the words like secularism and socialism from the Bangladesh's constitution, and also suggested more amendments, particularly in the 15th Amendment of the Constitution. To discuss that and ramifications, we are joined by Ambassador Veena Sikri, former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh, on the show, joining us live from Delhi. And also from Delhi, let me quickly welcome Suhas Chakma, Director, Rights and Risk Analysis Group, or RRAG. All right, we're going to thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. Suhas, I'm going to quickly start with you. Because you have been tracking the developments, particularly the larger safety, security and national human rights concerns, particularly of the minorities in Bangladesh, very, very closely since the takeover by the interim government. What exactly do you make of the remarks by the Attorney General, not only on the words socialism and secularism, but the arguments that have been put forth seeking the changes in these in 15th Amendment of the Bangladesh Constitution?
I think one part is what kind of impact it has on the minorities. But even if these two particular words were, in existence, are prevalent in the Constitution of Bangladesh, it's a fact that both the Hindus, Buddhists, and other minorities in any case face tremendous amount of violence or acts of violence on a regular basis. And when the state or the Attorney General comes up and makes this sort of arguments before the court and it's amplified all over the country, then of course minorities become much more vulnerable. But I would say that this is more than that. I think this is a drama which is being enacted by Dr. Yunus. Dr. Yunus has no legal standing whatsoever to continue as the interim government chief advisor. He has no legal basis. And if the 15th Amendment of the Constitution is being challenged, the question is whether the Constitution of Bangladesh is enforced.
Okay.
If the Constitution of Bangladesh is enforced, then obviously he is not somebody who is or who has been granted powers under the Constitution of Bangladesh, and he is doing this for only one reason, that he needs some legal basis to stay in power for a longer period of time. So that's why they want to bring back the system of interim government by amending this particular 15th Amendment, and this will be done away with because otherwise Yunus has no legal standing whatsoever.
Right,
so
because they've already, because the 90-day time period, that's what stipulates, that's the period by which the interim government, should beyond that 90-day deadline, they cannot really rule the roost. But taking that point to Ambassador Sikri, now he has also highlighted, the Attorney General has highlighted the so-called constitutional contradictions, quote unquote, where he has justified his, the whole opposition to the words, secularism and socialism, and this has triggered widespread reactions, by the way. And the first one to react has been United States, Trump's administration. So, but it seems that all this is really falling to duffus. How do you see this panning out from here?
Well, first of all, I think we have to all accept and recognize that all the members of the interim government, including Professor Mohammed Yunus, have taken oath on the present constitution of Bangladesh. So their allegiance, as declared in the oath of office they have taken, is to the present constitution of Bangladesh. But immediately after taking oath, they are now trying to go back on that, and they're trying to absolutely call into question the very elements of the present constitution of Bangladesh, which include secularism and socialism and nationalism, Bengali nationalism as well. And I think this is quite a disaster, because by doing this, they are actually denying their own constitutional and legal status. So if they are saying that we want to change the constitution of Bangladesh, then they have to recognize that since they have taken oath on the present constitution of Bangladesh, they cannot do that. They can only do it if they call elections, and the elected government can then decide what they want to do with the constitution, and they want to amend it if they have the 2/3 majority, and so on and so forth. So I think that this very basic element is what is not being recognized, and in fact the Attorney General, by arguing against the present constitution of Bangladesh, is only denigrating the very legal status that this interim government has, which is the oath of allegiance they have taken to the present constitution of Bangladesh. Number one. Number two, even if you take the concept of interim government, and the case in the court which is being argued today is about Constitutional Amendment number 15 being illegal and Constitutional Amendment number 13 which allowed caretaker government being legal. Okay, if you take that for a minute, then the thing is that how did the present judges who are listening to this case, how did they come into being? How did they take their position? Because when the interim government came to power, it's a kind of mobocracy that is prevailing since then. And the mobocracy, the mobs of Bangladesh, supposedly the students of Bangladesh, surrounded the judges, earlier judges, appointed legally by and forced them to resign. So how does the interim government have the authority to A, accept the resignations of the previous government, previous judges, and B, appoint new judges? This is a whole very messy constitutional situation, and I think the entire arguments being placed before the courts of Bangladesh really don't have any legitimacy, because they are based on a wrong argument. You can't take oath of allegiance to one government and to one constitution and then say that no, now we want to change that constitution. That means you're denying your own credibility. So I think this is the first thing that we have to recognize. And secondly, even if we accept for a second that 13th constitution which they want to have restored is to restore back the caretaker government, that caretaker government under that previous constitution, 13th Amendment, only allowed the interim government or the caretaker government to be in power for 90
days, right?
To have free and fair elections. But this government wants constitutional reforms. They want
so it's a ploy in a way, right? That 90-day reform point that I was discussing, sir, Suhas sir, kind of a ploy to really prolong elections, because is there some sense of fair if the country goes to polls, it could be a different verdict altogether?
He doesn't want elections. I think Ma'am was very clear that he has created a mobocracy. What he is doing is anybody who opposes the interim government, they basically let the students go and attack those persons and they are forced to resign. So he has created a system where he is saying he will hold elections only after reforms are completed. Now the reforms are supposed to be completed by the end of this year for the 6 commissions which he has established. Now recently he has established 4 more commissions. So these commissions will take years to complete, and at the end of the day these commissions have no standing whatsoever because they are not set up by an elected government. They are just some technocrats appointing his pals, and they set up this commission, and tomorrow there is an elected government. The elected government will come and say, well, we have the mandate of the people, we do not accept it, then we have to rewrite everything. So the entire commissions, the reforms which he is undertaking are actually is an exercise in futility, except the fact that anybody who opposes these reforms at this point of time will be seen as supporting Hasina's government, and they will be attacked as traitors in the country. So BNP itself is hesitant, and Mr. Yunus is actually completely relying on the Jamati Islami. So he is running the country actually with the help of some of the students and the Jamats. That's
Jamats, yes. And they also slammed constitutional declaration, Ambassador Sikri, of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman as the father of the nation. And there is a justification for that as well. So, the legacy of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman.
Well, the legacy of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, let me tell you, is recognized by all the people of Bangladesh. It's not a question of whether you give him a title of father of the nation or any other title, but his role in getting the independence of Bangladesh to actually come about is recognized by each and every one of Bangladesh. In fact, I would say that this government, who has now been sworn in under the chief advisor, Professor Muhammad Yunus, when they started on 5th of August by bringing down the statues of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and even the statues of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, who composed the national anthem of Bangladesh, they actually, from the very first minute, they took the wrong step. And the people have actually recognized that this government is not interested in the people of Bangladesh. They only want a caliphate because they are the Jamaat-e-Islami and the Hizb ut-Tahrir, both Islamist groups banned by many countries. They want these two groups to be in power. They don't care for Muhammad Yunus at all. He actually is a puppet. He's not exercising any power at all. And he's also, I believe, very unwell, and that is another problem. But I think the problem is that the people are beginning easily to see through this. And today the slogan in Bangladesh is, "Aige bhalo chilo." It was better earlier. So this is another problem that we have to recognize, because you can't sort of have 50 years with the recognition that it was the Awami League and led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman who brought in the independence of Bangladesh, and suddenly you say we want the independence but we don't want Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. So this unnatural argument is not actually being supported by the people at all, and many of the students who were there till the 5th of August have now been sidelined. And now you only have the Jamaat-e-Islami students, the Shibir, and other student groups who are from the Islamist groups. They are the ones who are ruling the roost. And the regular students who were there before the 5th of August have now dropped out. They're not there anymore in the power equations.
Okay. Mr. Chakma, now there are also reports of interim government cancelling the press extradition cards of more than 100 journalists. And there's a bigger question on the freedom of press. And then this is something, I mean, you can do your politics, but freedom of press being meddled with?
Well, I think it's not. It's about 168, journalists who have been actually denied or post press accreditations they removed. Till today, and I think there are about. I think we are counting today. We are preparing a note. It's about 78 journalists who are facing different kind of prosecution, and including war crime charges for merely reporting, which is absolutely insane. So if you look at the entire government of Bangladesh today, it's a fact that there are atrocities and there were abuses under Hasina, but this government is actually in a way worse than Hasina. So whatever the movement was about against dictatorship and etc., you could see that this has come back, and I think it's an opportunity which Dr. Yunus had lost. I think the Bangladesh needed free, fair elections, including the Awami League. It's for the people to decide whether Awami League will remain in the country or not in power. But what the government of Bangladesh, the interim government is doing, that they have banned Chhatra League as a terrorist organizations. They're trying to ban Awami League, or not including one single party from the 14-party alliance. They have burned down the office of the Jatiya Party on 31st.
Yes.
So, no, not anarchy. You are trying to create a system where only Jamaati Islami will remain, and I think they would have been successful. I think the only mistake, which I think Dr. Yunus said, it was like, after Trump came to power, it was like a solar eclipse for him. So, he has been put up by somebody, that's by the Americans, and now, the American government has changed, so he will possibly not be successful, but the aim was not to hold election. That's why even today Tariq Jia is not being allowed to come or return to the country.
All right. We'll leave it there. We'll see how this situation pans out from here legally also. But thank you very much, Mr. Chakma and Ambassador Sikri. Thank you very, very much for joining on this story and discussing the larger implications with us. Thanks. And now let's move on to some other stories that we have for you on the show. The Commonwealth of Dominica is set to acknowledge India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi with its most prestigious national accolade, the Dominica Award of Honour. The recognition is in acknowledgement of Prime Minister Modi's significant contributions to Dominica during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as his efforts to enhance the bilateral relationship between the two countries. The award ceremony will occur at the India CARICOM Summit, which is scheduled for November 19 to 21st in Georgetown, in Guyana, with the President of Dominica, Sylvanie Borton, presiding over the event in February 2021. Remember, the Indian government under the Prime Minister Modi's leadership provided Dominica with 70,000 doses of AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar lauded Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership and congratulated him on being conferred with Dominica's most prestigious national accolade, the Award of Honour. Taking to social media platform X, Minister Jaishankar wrote, an apt recognition for Prime Minister Modi's leadership and solidarity with the Global South. I congratulate Prime Minister Narendra Modi as Dominica recognizes India's support in healthcare, education and digital, especially the supply of COVID-19 vaccines. Prime Minister will build on the recognition and partnership at the upcoming India CARICOM Summit. Also, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, who is in UAE, visited the BAPS Hindu Mandir in Abu Dhabi on Thursday. Minister Jaishankar received the blessings at the BAPS Hindu Mandir there, and Minister Jaishankar also said the temple is a true symbol of India and UAE friendship and of peace, harmony and goodwill around the world. The 43rd India International Trade Fair is back in national capital. The fortnight-long global trade fair brings 11 countries and over 3,500 exhibitors to showcase their art and culture. Viksit Bharat at 2047 is the theme for this year's fair. DD India's Anil Thomas has the details.
The 43rd India International Trade Fair commenced at Bharat Mandapam, featuring over 3,500 exhibitors from India and abroad. This 14-day event is expected to draw around 100,000 visitors daily, with footfall rising by almost 50% to 150,000 visitors on the weekend. The theme for this year's fair is Developed India at 2047.
This year there are about 10 unique features of the IITF 43rd version 2024. It is designed around the Honorable Prime Minister's theme of Viksit Bharat, India at 2047. So this year, it is the largest ever participation which we have achieved so far. Almost all the states and union territories are participating, and this has happened only this year. Apart from this, the Bharat Mandapam complex is fully made operational and fully utilized for IITF for the first time.
The event will also see participation from 33 states and UTs and 49 central ministries. Bihar and Uttar Pradesh are the partner states, while Jharkhand is the focus state this year. 11 countries are also participating in the fair.
The annual event of prestigious IITF has a great significance to show a diverse range of products, services and technology from India and the world. Jharkhand, the land of natural resources and tribals, is going to be part of the IITF scheduled this year at Pragati Maidan, New Delhi as a focus state. This year, Jharkhand is participating in the IITF to showcase its rich culture and heritage. It gives me immense pleasure to extend my invitation to all the visitors to visit Jharkhand Pavilion.
The business days for IITF 2024 are scheduled from November 14th to 18th. Trade fair will be open for general public from November 19th to 27th. Anil Thomas, DD India, New Delhi.
Hit dangerous levels, triggering tougher anti-pollution measures under the Graded Response Action Plan or GRAP. Now, in view of the implementation of GRAP 3, Delhi Metro will make 20 extra trips into services on weekdays starting Friday. Thus, 63 extra trips will be done by Delhi Metro on weekdays till the GRAP 3 plan remains in place. DD India's Tapish Bhattacharya reports.
With Delhi's air quality reaching the severe category and an average AQI level of over 400, authorities are set to enforce the GRAP 3 starting Friday at 8 a.m. The Commission for Air Quality Management has reviewed the forecast, indicating little improvement as heavy fog and unfavorable weather grip the Indo-Gangetic Plain. Under Stage 3 of the Graded Response Action Plan, the city will ban petrol vehicles meeting only BS3 standards and diesel vehicles under the BS4 standard, extending these restrictions across the national capital region. Additionally, all non-essential construction and demolition activities are suspended with exception for national security, healthcare and essential infrastructure projects. More mechanized road sweeping and water sprinkling machines will also be deployed to reduce the dust. These measures reflect an urgent push to curb the pollution and protect the public health as the air quality remains critical. This is Tapish Bhattacharya signing off for DD India.
Well, India's cumulative exports from April to October 2024 has reached $468.27 billion, marking 7.28% growth over the same period in 2023. Merchandise exports in October 2024 were valued at $39.20 up 17.23% from October 2023. Total merchandise exports from April to October stood at $252.28 billion, showing a growth of 3.18%. Non-petroleum exports for October rose significantly by 25.63% to $31.61 billion. Cumulative non-petroleum exports hit $211.34 billion with 7.34% increase registered. Non-petroleum, non-gems and jewellery exports in October jumped 27.68%. The Department of Personnel and Training's Capacity Building Commission held the closing ceremony of National Learning Week in Vigyan Bhavan in New Delhi. Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh felicitated top participants, highlighting the need for continuous skill development to build a developed India. Over the week, participants engaged in at least 4 hours of competency-based learning through IGOT modules and webinars led by experts. National Learning Week fostered collaboration across ministries, aiming to align everyone with national goals and promote lifelong learning. Today is also World Diabetes Day, and in Delhi, the 52nd Annual Conference of Research Society for Study of Diabetes in India opened with over 10,000 doctors from across India participating in presenting papers in the next 4 days. A joint declaration between International Diabetic Federation and RSSDI will be released too.
We have to check the epidemic of diabetes that is confronting us today. We need to have a collaborative effort, and a collaborative effort which has to be extended beyond the practitioners of medicine, the researchers of medicine. It needs to have inputs from the cultural activists, from the social activists, and as the theme rightly says, bridging gaps or breaking barriers, bridging gaps. So breaking the barriers between the individual and the patient, individual and the doctor, the individual and the family, individual and society, and also the private sector and the public sector.
We must say that 80% of the people living with diabetes in the world, they come from Asia. So 80% of people living with diabetes come from India, China, Bangladesh and Pakistan. So this is a big burden in this region here. There are several reasons why it is like this, and one is of course the lifestyle of the people. News research data show that one of the big determinants for increasing the risk of getting diabetes is eating fried carbs. So if you fry a lot of your products, if you eat a lot of carbs, and unfortunately this is the lifestyle here in the region, here in India, but this lifestyle increases the diabetes risk.
Well, with that, it's time to wrap up this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Sakal Bhatt signing off from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.